Are you ready to do some really cute black and white designs? I'm going to show you how to create a beautiful monochromatic heart design in the easiest way possible. This design looks really easy, but there is a little bit of technique to it. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to get it done in a nice, speedy timing. So what you'll need is a white gel polish. So you want to go for something nice and white. I'm going with this one. This is Nail Order Blanc. It is very pigmented, so we're probably only going to need one layer of this. And then you also need a black gel paint. So I've got a black gel paint here. And then if your gel polish is pigmented enough, you can just use that. If it's not, then you want to grab yourself a white gel paint. This one is very loved, as you can tell. The bits are starting to come off. So you want a black and a white, basically. You can either do it all with gel paint, or you can do it with a gel polish if the gel polishes are pigmented enough. And then you also will need a palette, a dotting tool, and you want to grab yourself a liner. So this is a liner I'm using, and if you don't feel confident with a liner, you could try something like a detailer brush, so something a little bit smaller, but still we want it to be nice and thin. So let's start the design. I'm just going to pop everything to the side. So I'm going to start off by painting a layer of gorgeous blanc all over the nail. So this is our first step for creating this design. Some people start off with the black. I prefer to start off with the white. It's easier to paint over a white base than it will be over a black base, because then you really need to make sure that your gel polishes are super pigmented to cover over black. So I'm going to pop that in a lamp and then I'll be back. I actually forgot to say you also will need a full coverage brush for your black gel paint. So I'm going into my black gel paint, picking some up, and I'm just running the full cover brush through it just to cover the bristles. I'm not expecting this to be super opaque right now. I just need it to be opaque enough so when I go in and almost like cut the nail in half. So it's starting at the top and I'm using the body of the brush to drag it through. Don't worry if the line is not perfect, because we've got the liner to work with. Okay, and I'm going back in and I'm steadying myself with my pinky and pulling that through. Amazing. And again, so pulling that through. Try not to have too much of a shaky hand, but sometimes it's not easy. Okay, so I know that I want it roughly there. Now what you're going to do is you're going to prep your liner brush. So I'm going to dip my liner straight into that black gel paint. Okay, I want it covered like so, but I don't want blobs on there. So I'm going to grab my palette and I'm just going to run it through, kind of twisting it like so. So now we've got a nice covered brush. Then when you grab your nail again, support yourself with your pinky. That's super important to have a nice steady hand. And I'm going over and I'm gonna put that brush, the bristles all the way down and gently pull. So I'm using the brush to help me get that nice straight line. Okay, I'm going to cure that in the lamp now before going in with a second layer to make sure that it covers nicely for us. If you look at your nail and you think, okay, that's not really in the middle or where I want it to be, then just shift that line through a little bit. So you just go into your gel and then using the body of the brush, pulling those bristles all the way through. like so. Okay, so let's cure that in the lamp. So once that nail is out, I'm going to pick up what's left on that palette and then fill in that nail to make sure that it matches that nice deep black line that we did. And if you need to, just pick up a little bit more. Don't do too thick of a layer. It's better to go in with a couple thinner layers when it comes to black, just to make sure it covers, rather than putting too much black on and then risking it not curing properly. Okay, sometimes also your brush might not be saturated enough and it just takes it a moment to soak up that black to be able to transfer it on. Now around the cuticle area, I like to go in and almost kind of bend around the cuticle area to get really close. Okay, so here it is. Now let's cure that in the lamp. So at this point, I like to wipe the nail with IPA and remove any residue from the gel. Okay, so like so. Here I can see that the black didn't cover perfectly, but that's okay. We're going to deal with that because we're going to put the heart there. Okay, it might look a little bit textured because if your gel paint is a little bit on the thicker side, it can leave some marks, but it's cured, fully cured, and ready to go on with the hearts. So what I like to do, because hearts can be a little bit tricky to get exactly the same, and when you're doing them in two different colors, that makes it even more tricky. So I like to use a dotting tool. So I have dipped my dotting tool in white, and now I'm going ahead and putting it where I want the top of my heart to be. And then I'm circling round and round in that white until I get close to that line, the middle line. Okay, this is where you will decide how large you want your heart to be. So I'm just going round and round. Don't worry if it starts separating, because you can always fill it back in. So now we've got a nice big dot. I want to add a tiny bit more, just to make it nice and smooth. So I'd added a little bit more of the white gel paint onto my dotting tool, and I'm just going ahead and creating that circle round and round. Now you've got two choices. You can do the first part, which is the white part, and then go in with your black part, or you can do both dots now and just join them all together. Personally, I prefer to do them one at a time. So I'm going to just grab my liner. Okay, so I've grabbed a tiny bit of white on my liner and I'm going to add it to that nail. And now we're slowly starting to pull that white out into a shape of a heart. So we're pulling it towards the middle, like so. Okay, this is where we're getting a tiny bit more on the brush, and we're moving the gel that's already on the nail and start creating that nice heart. Remember that the colors will look a little bit different right now, but that's because we wiped it. So the base colors that we've put on will look a little bit more matte. Okay, so we're starting to fill that heart in. I'm filling all of that black space in with white, and I want a nice point on this heart, so I'm going to bring it all the way across, taking my time, doing it in small strokes. Okay, like so. Now you can decide, do you want to make it a little bit chunkier, or if you're happy with a nice thin heart. I'm going to go with a thinner heart just because this nail tip is quite thin, so I want it to match what we're going with. Okay, now you can clean up the lines by turning your brush upside down like so. Okay, and supporting yourself with your pinky. I'm going in and then slowly using the base of the bristles to control the gel that's already on the nail plate. Okay, now I'm just going to clean it up on this side. So like I said, it's a nice looking design and it looks simple, but because it's so simple, it needs to be absolutely perfect. So you need to take your time with it. So here is my half heart. So I'm going to cure that in the lamp. Okay, now it's out of the lamp, we need to create the other side. And that is when we're going to also kind of polish it off and make sure that everything is looking nice and equal. So I've got some black on my dotting tool and I'm going ahead and kind of measuring out roughly where I want it to be. So about here. And I'm going in and twirling that gel around, trying to make it similar thickness to the other one. And also making sure I don't go too high with it. So I'm trying to twirl it downwards rather than up where I've already been and where I placed that dot. Okay, so I can tell that I need it a little bit higher. So I'm going to go back in and just twirl it around. And that gel will start moving outwards in a nice round shape. And we want that nice round shape for our heart. So once you have done that, you want to grab yourself your liner just like before, and we're going to be joining that in towards the middle like so. Now don't worry if things are not lining up properly yet. We are going to make sure everything is lining up well once we're finished. So I'm going in and just pulling that downwards like so. It's hard to breathe when you try and hold your breath when you're doing this. Work with liner brushes, always makes you hold your breath. So I'm pulling that downwards and then also need to make that nice arched shape. And it will always depend on what kind of heart you're going for to how arched you want to go across the nail. Okay. So I'm happy there. And I can see that I'm going to have to get the white part just extended a little bit into the black part. So I'm just making sure everything is nice and rounded off. And then I'm going to cure that and go back in with the white. Now, if your rounded off bits here are looking a little bit jagged, what you can do is, I didn't pick up enough gel there. What you can do is pick up some more gel on your dotting tool and start rounding that off with your dotting tool. Because otherwise, if you go in with your brush, it can make it look a bit jagged. But if you go in with your dotting tool, it will round it off because it's a nice round tool. So it's easier to create that rounded off edge. And again, don't worry if you get any dots of white coming through because we can fill that in. So I'm just going to go ahead and cure that, and then we'll be back to fix the other side. So before we start, I need to make sure that my brush is completely clean from black. So I've gone and got myself a lint-free wipe, and I am just twisting that brush in that lint-free wipe to make sure there is no black left on there, because otherwise it's going to shadow and is going to end up giving us grey rather than black rather than white. So I'm just covering the tip of the brush with some white, and I've turned my brush and I'm supporting myself with my pinky, and I'm just lining it up nicely with the black heart, and I'm just pulling that through. Okay, so I'm just pulling that through very gently. Okay, picking up a tiny bit more of the white. I've turned my brush the right way around again and just pulling that through, and then we're going to go downwards as well. Okay, so you're going, sorry if you can hear the sneezing. My husband's having an absolutely sneezing fit right now. Bless him. So I'm turning my hand around again and doing very small strokes with my liner, blending that white into the nail. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and just with the white very gently start creating a line here like so. Okay, so I'm going to cure that in the light, and if you're happy with how it looks when it comes out the lamp and you feel like you don't need to do any tweaks, then all you need to do is top coat, and that will melt the whole design together and bring it to life. So here we go, let's top coat and pop that in the lamp. And here they are. So this one I did before. As you can see, I had a little bit of the black leaked through, so you can fix that. But I wanted to still show you that you can do them a little bit shorter or a little bit longer. They just look really effective. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.